What if I told you that deep in the hills of Tanzania, African blacksmiths once created furnaces so advanced, scientists could barely explain them? What if centuries before modern industry, before giant steel factories, before Europe mastered industrial metallurgy, communities in East Africa were already producing high-grade iron using techniques that seemed impossible for their time? And what if one of those furnaces burned so hot it rivaled modern industrial systems? For generations, the story was ignored, not because it never happened, but because it challenged everything the world thought it knew about African technology. Hidden among the mountains of northwestern Tanzania, surrounded by forests, clay earth, and ancient trade routes, lived iron smelters whose knowledge transformed stone into metal, fire into tools, and villages into powerful societies. Their furnaces breathed like living creatures. Their work was surrounded by ritual, and their secrets were passed down through memory, not books. But when archaeologists finally uncovered the remains of these iron-working sites, they discovered something astonishing. These were not primitive experiments. They were masterpieces of engineering, a story of science, mystery, fire, and one of Africa's greatest hidden technologies. Long before colonial borders divided Africa, the region we now call Tanzania was home to thriving kingdoms, trade networks, and highly skilled craftsmen. The landscape itself shaped civilization. Towering mountains rose above fertile valleys. Rivers carried life across the land. Dense forests provided charcoal, and beneath the earth lay iron ore. To many ancient societies, iron was more than metal. It was power. Iron meant stronger weapons, better farming tools, more productive harvests, greater military strength. Communities with iron controlled trade, agriculture, and survival itself. And in Tanzania, certain communities became masters of this craft, especially among the Haya people near Lake Victoria. For centuries, the Haya developed a reputation that spread across the region. They were feared warriors, expert farmers, and extraordinary iron smelters. But no one outside their communities truly understood how advanced their methods were, because the knowledge was protected, sacred, secret, passed from master to apprentice through oral tradition. Many outsiders assumed African iron production was simple and inefficient. That assumption would later collapse completely. In the 1970s, archaeologists began studying ancient iron furnaces in Tanzania. At first, researchers expected to find ordinary pre-industrial technology. Instead, they discovered something almost unbelievable. The furnaces used by the Haya people appeared capable of producing extremely high temperatures, temperatures comparable to modern steel-making techniques. Researchers found evidence of preheated air systems, complex furnace designs, carefully engineered airflow mechanisms, and carbon steel production centuries before Europe industrialized similar processes. One scientist was especially stunned, Dr. Peter Schmidt. When he examined the furnace remains, he realized these ancient smelters had mastered a highly sophisticated method of transforming iron ore into steel. Not crude iron, steel. This discovery changed everything. Because steel production requires precise temperature control and carbon management, it is not accidental. It requires deep technical knowledge. And, according to the evidence, Tanzanian smelters had achieved this long before many industrial societies elsewhere. The furnaces themselves were engineering marvels, tall structures built from clay and grass, bellows connected through ceramic pipes, air channels designed with remarkable precision. Some systems even use preheated air, dramatically increasing combustion efficiency. Modern engineers recognize something shocking. These ancient furnaces functioned similarly to principles used in modern blast furnace technology, and yet they had been developed independently centuries earlier. The world had underestimated African science. Again, imagine standing before one of these furnaces at night. The heat would be unbearable. Flames roaring upward into darkness, charcoal crackling, bellows pumping rhythmically like giant lungs, workers covered in sweat and ash. The process began with iron ore. Ore was collected from deposits scattered across the region. Then came charcoal production. Massive amounts of wood were carefully burned under controlled conditions to create charcoal hot enough for smelting. Next came furnace preparation. The furnace had to be constructed precisely, Too much airflow. The fire became unstable. Too little. Temperatures collapsed. Every detail mattered. The smelters layered charcoal and iron ore inside the furnace. Then the bellows began. Workers pumped air continuously for hours, sometimes days. Inside the furnace, temperatures climbed beyond 1,300 degrees Celsius. The ore slowly transformed. Impurities melted away. Molten slag separated from usable metal. And gradually, a bloom of iron formed. But the Haya process went further. Researchers discovered evidence suggesting controlled carbon absorption, meaning the metal was not merely iron. It became steel-like material with superior strength. This required astonishing technical understanding. Not written formulas, not modern chemistry, but generations of observation, experimentation, and inherited knowledge. Knowledge preserved entirely through tradition. Iron smelting in Tanzania was never just physical labor. It was spiritual. Among many African societies, blacksmiths were viewed with both respect and fear, because transforming stone into metal seemed almost supernatural. Smelting rituals surrounded every stage of production. Certain ceremonies had to be performed before lighting the furnace. Songs were sung, offerings were made, and some communities believed spiritual forces determined whether the furnace would succeed. The furnace itself symbolized transformation, earth becoming power through fire. To outsiders, these rituals appeared mystical, but beneath them existed practical discipline. The rituals preserved consistency and focus. Even small mistakes could destroy an entire smelting operation. So science and spirituality became deeply connected. The furnace was both a machine and a sacred space. Once iron was produced, blacksmiths transformed it into tools essential for daily life. Axes, knives, spears, farming blades, arrowheads. Every object required precision. The smith heated metal repeatedly, hammered it into shape, cooled it carefully, then reheated it again. Each strike refined the material. The sound of hammering echoed through villages. Farmers depended on iron tools to increase food production. Warriors relied on iron weapons for protection. Entire communities survived because of these craftsmen. Some blacksmith families guarded their techniques for generations. Their knowledge became inheritance, a secret passed carefully from father to son. And because leaders depended on iron workers, blacksmiths often held political influence. Without iron, kingdoms weakened. Iron transformed East Africa's economy. Communities with strong iron industries gained major advantages. Trade routes expanded around metal goods. Iron tools and weapons traveled across forests and savannas. Iron could be exchanged for food, cattle, salt, and cloth. Powerful kingdoms grew stronger through access to metal production. Iron also changed warfare. Stronger spearheads, more durable blades, better military equipment. Control over metallurgy often meant control over power, and Tanzania's ironworkers helped shape regional influence for centuries. This was not isolated craftsmanship. It was a sophisticated industrial tradition connected to trade, politics, and survival. Then came colonial rule. European powers entered East Africa and disrupted traditional industries. Imported European metal goods flooded local markets. Colonial governments imposed new economic systems. Many African technologies were dismissed as inferior. Traditional smelting began to decline. Forests used for charcoal production were restricted. Communities lost access to resources. Ancient furnace sites were abandoned. Knowledge chains slowly broke apart. Some master smelters died without passing on their techniques. Others were pushed into colonial labor systems. Over time, much of this engineering tradition faded from public memory, and many outsiders assumed it had never been advanced at all, until archaeology revealed the truth. One of the most remarkable moments came when researchers attempted to rebuild the ancient furnaces. Using traditional materials and historical techniques, they recreated Haya-style smelting systems. Many scientists expected failure. Instead, the furnaces performed astonishingly well. Temperatures rose high enough to produce steel. The experiment confirmed that the ancient smelters truly understood advanced metallurgical principles, not through modern textbooks, but through generations of experimentation and inherited knowledge. The reconstruction forced historians to reconsider assumptions about African technology, because the evidence was undeniable. These were not primitive furnaces. They were sophisticated engineering systems. The story of Tanzania's iron smelters is about more than metal. It is about forgotten knowledge. For centuries, African technological achievements were ignored or minimized. Yet archaeology continues revealing a different reality, a reality filled with innovation, engineering, and scientific skill. The Haya smelters mastered heat control without modern instruments, built efficient furnace systems without industrial factories, and produced high-quality metal centuries before many people believed possible. Their story reminds us that human innovation has never belonged to one region alone. Brilliance existed across the world, including Africa. Tonight, the fires of ancient Tanzania burn again through memory. The iron smelters transformed earth into steel, knowledge into power, and villages into thriving societies. Their furnaces glowed against the African night, long before modern industry changed the world. And hidden within those flames was proof of something history tried to erase. That African civilizations were not technologically behind. They were innovators, engineers, masters of fire, and their story deserves to be remembered. And this is one story they never told you about Africa.